see. Trying to see how I can get you. Okay, there we go. All right.
Hey, hey.
How you doing?
Good.
All right. Good. Thank you for joining me
No
this evening.
problem. Getting
Awesome.
my stuff together.
Okay, good. All right, good. Well, yes, thank you so much again for being here. I'm really excited
Yeah.
about this. All right. Yes. So you guys, last week was my birthday. So I'm just
Whoop, whoop.
using yes, I'm using all of the decorations and different sets that we created for my sets all month long. So again, thank you for joining me for this celebration of
Yeah.
love, Black History Month, and my birthday. Yes.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. All right. So tonight we have Miss Renee Haskins, a therapist and school counselor. She's going to talk to us about respect this evening, which is a very touchy topic. Like, it's a very hard thing to describe and define because a lot of times we don't even realize that we're not even practicing it ourselves. So, could you tell us, first of all, do you have a drink this evening that you'd like to share with us?
We're going real basic tonight. I got the good H2O, trying to stay
Okay.
hydrated,
Yes.
keep the
Yes.
skin clear. That's
I
my drink
love
of choice
that.
this evening.
Yes, that's what's up. I got my water right here. Got a little
Yeah.
bit of my super dog wine right here
Nice.
as well.
Nice.
Good. So yeah, I'm be sipping on that. So while you tell us about yourself, let's get a little doodle in. So
Okay.
yeah, tell us all about you.
Okay. So first I want to start by saying that tonight I am using Crayola Super Tips, okay?
Hey,
Straight from the kids.
yes.
Got a multitude of colors. But a little bit about myself. So I am, as you said, a school counselor. I'm also a therapist working with adolescents, young adults. I'm also a doctoral student at James Madison University and
Mm,
really enjoying that. Learning right now about just how to train counselors. So that's
okay.
me. I'm also a wife and a mom and just someone that, loves people.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. I know that's pretty
Yeah.
quick. We don't have too much to doodle, so we're gonna get right into the interview.
Okay.
All right. So, how would you define respect? Like, what does that look like in your life? How's that demonstrated to you?
Yeah. So what is respect? To me, it's all about admiration and honoring who a
Mm,
person is, right?
yeah.
So when you respect someone, you're looking at their abilities, their skills, what makes up who they are, and you're
Mm,
appreciating that. And I think respect is shown in so many different ways throughout the lifespan, right? So what respect may look like for a toddler is different
mm,
than how respect is shown for an adult. Um,
mm.
but I think we all have the ability to show respect in many ways
Okay.
as we value others. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yes, I love that definition because that's actually the definition in the dictionary. So
Hey.
that is that's definitely what it said. Just complete deep admiration for someone and
Yeah.
just caring about them. So that's how I would go about defining it as well. Like it's definitely changed throughout my life and like you said, in different spaces. So it just to me it's the treating yourself and others with kindness and
Hmm.
understanding. That's what I think it is. So that's yeah, that was dope.
Yeah.
So what are some examples of disrespect?
Mm. So, I think disrespect can be as simple as shaming someone for being who they are, right?
Mhm.
Making someone feel less than, sneak dissing, right? So it's not always so
Mhm.
blatant, but sometimes
Mhm.
when we take the time to devalue someone,
Mhm.
that's a form of disrespect. And, sometimes it's just not honoring the journey that someone has had, right? So if I am in a position of authority and you're still devaluing the road that I took to get there, I think that's disrespect as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So would you say that like passive aggressiveness is like a form of disrespect in a way?
Yeah, it can be, but it's all about intention. Like, why are you being passive aggressive?
Mhm.
You know?
Okay.
Um, but I do think that sometimes we can show more respect by being honest, and sometimes honesty is difficult, right? So
Mhm.
if I'm upset about something you're doing, I don't like it, it's easier to be passive aggressive at times than to just say, this isn't working for me. It's hurting me to experience this or whatever. So
Mhm.
yeah, passive aggressive can be a form of disrespect, but it's all about the intention behind it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. So with that being said, like, have you ever like unknowingly disrespected yourself?
Mm. Unknowingly.
Or I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
mm,
I think like, looking back, whether it be moves that I didn't make. It's so funny because I see one person that's on here. One of my friends who I worked with as a school counselor, and we talked about the importance of making moves, right? And how
mhm,
sometimes you have to make those moves in silence. Um, Sometimes you have to talk yourself into making moves because there's like a fear of failure, right? So I've disrespected
mhm,
myself at times by being what my mom would call analysis to the point of paralysis, right? You don't make
mm,
that
yeah,
move because you're like,
mhm,
it may not work. What if I fail? Um,
mm,
and it's caused me to miss out on things sometimes, just out of
right,
that fear of failure. So that I think that's in a way a form of disrespect. Sometimes staying in situations or relationships longer than I
mhm,
needed to be.
right,
Um, that has been a form of disrespect, and even I don't know, man. Like I think opportunities just that I may have dragged my feet on for me.
okay,
Not looking at myself for who I was, right? Like I could look at
right,
myself today and be like, okay, I know that I'm a pretty amazing contributor to society. But there
yeah,
are times in my life where I felt like maybe, I'm not like this person or that person.
mhm,
Um, so in a sense, comparison can be a form of disrespect,
mhm,
right? You
okay,
know? Yeah.
yeah. And I never looked at comparison like that because it is something that I do quite often. And as I stated before, like I've definitely been reevaluating like how I treat myself and the way, I talk to myself and like you said, how I drag my feet or why I'm dragging my feet. Like I feel like I don't deserve that opportunity. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll wait to the last minute to go for it or plan it
Yep.
out because I feel like, okay, well, I'm not going to win anyway. So I'm not going to try,
Right.
you
Right.
know. So rather than set myself up for the disappointment, I just don't do that. And like you said as well, like I just, at this point in my life, I look at myself like, okay, I wouldn't even entertain those situations or have those negative people in my circle anymore. So I guess it's just a learning thing, like, daily learn how to respect yourself more. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
definitely. So who
Yeah, and
would
I
you
think
say? Oh, go ahead. I'm
oh,
sorry.
just you just made me think of something because at the end of the day, it's about value, right?
Yeah,
When we
yeah,
talked about the
yeah.
original definition of respect, it was about like honoring a person's skills. So
Mm-hmm.
when we honor that within ourselves, then that leads to different, perspectives of how we go about living and how we go about
Right.
interacting with other people. So I think value and respect, they really do go hand in hand.
Definitely. For
Yeah.
sure. So, have you ever had to have, okay, well, let me ask you this. Who or what helped you to realize that you were treating yourself badly?
hmm The Lord. God. But I mean, and not joking, like for real, some of it is
No.
just kind of seeing myself the
Yeah.
way that he sees me, right? But then
Yeah.
also, one of my first examples of like, okay, Renee, you need to see yourself differently. You need to view the world differently. Was my mother,
Mm.
just kind of instilling those things. So shout out to Pat Williamson.
Hey.
Um, and then honestly, just being surrounded by people that also um, have supported that and even called out the times when I'm doing disrespectful things towards myself.
Mm.
My husband, he is a person that consistently will kind of call that out. Like, come on now. Do you know who
Yeah.
you are? Like,
Yes.
take that risk.
Yeah.
Recognize your greatness. And then I've surrounded myself by friends too who also do
Mm.
that. But it's crazy because I can't say that was always the case, you know.
Mm.
My friend circles have changed as I've gotten older. I've had some friends for a very long time who have always been consistently the ones to kind of say, like, build yourself up, respect yourself, look at yourself highly. But I've had to learn to also remove people that might have done the opposite, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I would think so too. Like, it's definitely been God. Like, it's nothing for me but God. Like, I've been writing some different things down and just reflecting, and I'm like, okay, well, that situation, like all these situations, maybe if I seen it as bad at the time, like I'm starting to realize like all of that was love and protection and
hmm
just to show you how great you are. So yeah, it's just more lessons about respecting yourself and loving yourself and the relationship you have with God and others. And if you do
hmm
that, like you should be straight. But I mean, it's easier said than done. So,
Yeah.
have you? Oh, let me ask you this first. What steps did you take to actually start respecting yourself daily?
Yeah. Steps, you know. It's funny because in the moment, it wasn't like I was like, and step one,
Right,
step
right,
two,
right.
let's do. But I think it started with just kind of settling in with who I was, right? Settling
Mm,
in with what makes me unique.
yeah,
Um, and like I said, I'm gonna probably talk about comparison so many times tonight because I don't know when it happened. Because I have always been a comparer. Um, but I started to kind of be like, oh, you know what? There's only one me, right?
mm,
And who I am is
mhm,
actually enough um, and amazing. So I would probably do better being myself than trying to be
right.
someone else, right?
Yeah,
Um, and so, yeah, I think just celebrating uniqueness. I think also recognizing that we're all kind of a mess. Let me not even say kind of. We're all a mess. We we
yeah,
we have
yeah,
stuff going on, every single person. And so once we settle into that and recognize that we are going to continue to be a work in progress, like there's no perfect person on this planet,
yeah,
then you kind of embrace that and recognize, there's some things I'm going to work on and there are other things that's just who I am,
right.
um, so yeah, I feel like it also came from just allowing myself to take risk in different spaces. So,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be work, life, relationships, taking risk allowed me to settle into being comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
in respecting myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, I agree with you. Like as you're going through these things, you don't really think like, okay, this is a method to
Mhm.
this, like to help someone else. But it really is like you look back and like, man, like God was always preparing me for the next thing or the next thing that's coming. So like, and I heard you say acceptance. That's really, really a big point that I'm coming to in terms with my life right now. Like, I'm
Mhm.
just always been all over the place and have like a million things going on. So, and
Yeah.
I've always fought with that. I've been mad at myself. I've always been like, oh God, like, why didn't you just make me normal? Like, why can't I just think like a normal person? And I've just really been, it's just funny because this past week, like, I've been trying to work like all week, and all week, my computer has been just crashing
Mm.
all week. They've sent me like two and three computers, haven't been able to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to work on myself, and it just all the things that are coming up is just amazing because I'm just starting to accept like, okay, I do have a million and one thoughts or a million and one things that I want to do, but they all tie in together. And if I list them all out, I can get organized and I can actually name these different parts of me. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
People do that. And I started being inspired to watch other women who are doing these things and doing different things in the media. And I'm like, wow, this is possible. Like, I can do these things. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about acceptance and taking a chance on yourself. Cause I usually just count myself out and be like, oh, I can't do that. Like, I'm either too old, I don't know enough. Like, it's just ridiculous
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
I definitely get in my way a lot. Like, I'm my biggest critic. So thank you for speaking on that.
Oh my gosh. And like when you think about it, I love how you mentioned kind of looking and exploring and understanding others. And because,
Hmm.
like, I don't know, man, the older I get, the more that I actually don't care that I'm sorry, I do care that I'm getting older, but I am
Hmm.
not basing my goals on age
Yeah,
anymore, right?
yeah,
Like,
yes,
I
yes.
feel like in my 20s, it was like, I got to do all this by this period of time in life. By
Hmm. Hmm.
22, this, by 25. And then you realize life is going to happen, right? And
Yeah,
so recently I've been very inspired by older women that are accomplishing things
me too.
within their own time. And I
Yeah.
think that once we recognize that it's not that we should really base our accomplishments on society's
Hmm.
perspective of time, but more so on our own track, right? Like there's
Yeah.
always that talk about like stay in your own lane, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what does that
Hmm.
really mean? That means like someone could be beasting ahead of you. They could be like 5 miles ahead of you. But
Yeah.
did they have the same start that you had? Did they have the
Mhm.
same journey? You
Right.
know? I think we're all doing pretty great considering that we started from where we started specifically.
Right.
And so we have to start from there, not from where someone else was. So I love that.
For sure. Yes. And I I'm glad that you mentioned timelines as well because that's something I was very hard on myself as well about. Just like, okay, I'm not doing this as fast as everybody else. I feel like I'm behind
Mm,
doing this. But I was listening to a podcast this morning as well called Dear Gabby. I love it. So if you get a chance, try it out, listen to it. It's
plug.
great.
Yeah.
Yes. So she was just saying like we have to drop the timelines to allow God's plan, and that just I just turned it off and just sat there for like 10 minutes
Mm,
because I'm like
mhm.
that's it. Like I'm not allowing these things to happen. Like I'm constantly blocking them. Like I'll have a thought. Like at the beginning of the week, I was having a thought like, okay, well you're getting a new preview to your new lifestyle because this is ultimately what I want. Just making different streams of income,
Mhm.
with my mind and just going in. And then
Yeah.
I instantly said no to that. Why? Why did I feel like I'm inadequate to have that? And I just, you keep asking these questions, but you're right. You have to, evaluate and take into account what's going on with you and
Mhm.
stop comparing others' timelines to yourself. So, yes, that's definitely a form of disrespect for sure.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
sure. So, do you think it's possible to truly respect others without respecting yourself?
Yes. Yes, I do. And it's kind of sad, right?
Hmm.
Because I think sometimes I don't know where this comes from, right? Sometimes we value others more than ourselves. And there's a space to value self, but also to care about others. So,
Hmm.
like, I think about like, you can give the best advice to someone else, right? About all the things they need to do to take care of themselves and be there for themselves, but then not
Hmm.
apply that to your own life.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so yeah, I could wish the most for you. I could wish the best for you. and, want you to really have, self-worth, value, respect for yourself, but still
Right.
not see myself worthy of that.
Hmm.
It's possible. It's very possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree as well. And it's sad that that is possible because I've been living like that for long time. Like I can be positive about anybody else's situation. I can, pump them up, whatever, you can do it, but me, no, I can't do that. Couldn't possibly do it. So I'm glad that I'm moving on to a space where I'm like, yeah, I can see myself in that light. So you're right.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to shift the perspective because that's very draining to just be
Yeah.
given, like, all of that. And you won't even realize why you feel defeated because you're giving everything to everybody else. So,
Mm-hmm. 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 And as women, I kind of feel like we sometimes fall trapped to that because,
yeah.
there's such a focus on being a nurturer, which I think is an amazing and important part of life. Men can be
Mhm.
nurturers as well. That's another story
Mhm.
for another day. Nurturing is not gender specific. But at the same time, it's almost valued a lot of times for women to put the attention on caring for others
Mhm.
and not putting that attention into themselves. So we have to really unlearn that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely takes a lot of time.
Hmm.
So, have you ever had a situation at work or at home where we're having a difficult time being respected or respecting others? And how did you handle that?
Mm. The first thing I can think of is work. And it's so funny. No true examples. I see a coworker on here, so But yeah, like growing as a professional is tough, man, especially when you start in a field um young and with very little
Mm,
experience.
yeah.
So I remember times where especially as a school counselor, you sit in a lot of rooms where people are looking at you to be an expert, but you just got out of school, so you're still kind of learning things.
Yeah.
And I remember a specific time where someone really kind of came for me in a meeting. Like, I didn't
Mhm.
have kids at the time. Um, and I was, I think, in maybe my like second or third year. And they,
Mhm.
they tried to come for my ability to be at the table um,
Mhm.
for a meeting that we were having. And in that moment, I'll be honest, I did not self advocate because I hadn't learned that skill yet. I think that's something that you kind of have to
Mhm.
learn with time. I just kind of took it. It was something along the
Mhm.
lines of like, I don't know if you really would have a lot to contribute, you're new and you also don't have any kids. I was just like, whoa. So that was
Yeah.
an experience that today, Renee, right, would have a
Right. Yeah.
whole read respectfully,
Yeah.
but at the time I didn't know how to take it and I felt very just unarmed in that moment because I was like, what do I even say? Because she's kind of
Mhm.
right. I don't have experience, but I learned a lot from that. Um, and it's kind of led to a skill that I think I've developed of being able to advocate respectfully. You can't really learn how to advocate for yourself without some experiences of being shut down or,
Mhm.
disrespected. And so that
Yeah.
did come from that experience. Yeah.
Okay. And I like the word that you use, self-advocate. Like, because you hear about like, oh, I'm an advocate for this or advocate for that, but what about
Hmm.
yourself? Like, that's
Right. What
that's
about yourself?
yes, like, and I feel like that will keep coming up in your life until you do it. Like,
Hmm.
I've been experiencing like different forms of disrespect in relationships or a job or whatever, but it will always be the same type. So I just evaluated like, okay, what's going on here and what I'm not gonna deal with. And I've been dealing with things differently. So it's just like you said, just you gotta learn these things, but you can't learn them until they come. So yeah, just experience. Just experience.
Experience. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
So what are some practical ways that we can all show respect to other people?
To other people, you said?
Hmm.
Yeah. That's a good question. So I think one way we can show respect to other people is
Mhm.
by like almost having a more collectivist approach to like life, right? So we all bring
Mhm.
something to the table, right? And so I'm more prone to value people when I recognize that there's something that they bring that I don't have. You know, I could think of work, I could think of a relationship, friendship. You put a lot more value on people when you recognize that there are aspects that they bring to your life that you would not have without them, you know?
Mm.
And I think that kind of leads into also just not comparing again, not taking time to compare past situations to that person. This person that's in front of you is a whole different being.
Right.
um you know,
Mm.
and so whatever they bring, you take that for what it is instead of comparing what they aren't, you know, just valuing who they are. um I think those are real key steps to being able to respect other people. um
Mhm.
and you know, it's funny because like knowing that we were talking about respect, I started looking up like, I don't know, and I know we might talk about this, but different types of respect, right? Because you respect people for
Mhm.
different reasons.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's what they like, who they are, right? Like you're in this
Mhm.
role of, I don't know, you're in a role of authority.
Right.
Sometimes it's more so their affiliation, right? So like,
Mhm.
um, you know, you man's cousin, and you know, that's my boy. So
Right.
that makes you more
Yeah.
important to me, right?
Yeah.
But then also sometimes it's respect based upon what a person gives. So you as an artist, right? People may
Mhm.
respect you surely off of your gift. A doctor, a therapist, right? What we bring to society at times, um, aside from who we are as an individual, just our role can make people respect us. So
Mm.
sometimes you just have to look for the value in a person. And I think that will help you to respect them more.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like, yeah, you just have to be willing to change your perspective because, different places, different spaces call for different things. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So, working with children, has
Mm.
that taught you more about self-respect and respecting others, and how? How has that done
Yeah.
that?
Um, yeah, I think that the beautiful thing about working with kids is you see things from the beginning, you know?
Mm.
So like, um, just like I think it would be like it's probably beautiful working with elders and seeing things from another perspective as well. But
Yeah.
watching children, I recognize that they're like the purest form of us. And so a lot
Mhm.
of what they mimic is based upon what they see, right? Um, so everybody comes to first grade kind of on the same playing field. You know,
Mhm.
they're not as superficial as we are, but at
Right.
the same time, um, I think that they view the world in a more like just holistic way. And so it's like a master class in respect. If you're nice to me, I'll respect you. If
Yeah.
you know, are friendly, I'll respect you. So
Mhm.
I learn a lot from the perspective of working with them. I also recognize that children deserve respect. And I don't know, I'm not going to get into generations, but I think children have more of a voice now, you know?
Mm. I
Um,
agree.
and
I
growing up,
agree.
it was kind of like, listen,
Yeah.
you hush your mouth, be quiet, and play in the corner. Like kids are saying how they feel, you know, sometimes respectfully, sometimes they haven't learned that skill yet.
Yeah.
But these babies are going to tell you, you know, how they feel, what doesn't make sense to them.
Right.
Um, you know, so there's a lot of learning. And I think working in the elementary school, I saw that teachers had a very big impact on how children respected each other.
Mm.
In middle school, interestingly enough, I feel like the biggest influencer is like they're the biggest influencer to each other. So even at the school that I work at, I feel
Mhm.
like modeling respect is really making them model it to each other. So teachers can
Mhm.
all day be like, be respectful, but
Yeah.
they are
Mhm.
very impacted by how they see one another treat each other, you know?
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I definitely agree as well. Like, I've taught preschool before.
Okay.
I've been a camp counselor and camp director and stuff and all that. And just working with the different ages and stuff, like you said, like they will definitely, they'll forget what you say in a minute. But if you treat them wrong, if they see somebody being mean or upset, they're going to remember how you made them feel. Like no matter what, they're gonna remember that. And
Mm-hmm.
they see what you're doing, they're soaking that up. So that really taught me a lot more too about respect and respecting more of my time because
Mm.
I have to plan every little thing for them, like bathroom breaks, washing their
Yeah.
hands, like all that stuff. And I didn't realize that I was disrespecting my time until I blocked it out like I have to do for the preschoolers. Like, because, from the time you wake up till you go to sleep at night, like, that's the time is ticking. Like, so I just
Mm-hmm.
started mapping my stuff out. Like, okay, I got, 8 hours of sleep. I got 8 hours to give to somebody else for a while. And then I
Yeah.
have, 8 hours to myself. So what am I going to do with that? I got to build my dreams and different things like that. So it's just,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's all learning. Like you're going into these different situations to be a student at all times. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
And it is
Definitely.
interesting because you also see like you see upbringing, right? So there are some kids, their respect of self is on a million because
Mhm.
somebody has been building them up since age 2 and maybe saying affirmations and maybe taking the time to allow them to explore their skills. And then there
Mhm.
are some students that really, based on circumstances and situations, they struggle with respect
Mhm.
for self. And I don't know, I think it is a powerful thing to be an educator because you're kind of like you're a part of that grouping of people that frame their mind into like how they view themselves, and it's also very powerful. Think about, like, most of us can think of that teacher that really poured into us and helped us to value ourselves. We
Mhm.
also remember the names of those teachers that may have devalued us or said something that really impacted us to this day. So there's so much power
Mhm.
in what we say to students that impacts their view of themselves and their respect for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I bet, like, honestly, too, like, it's a lot. 'Cause just me being around my house and stuff, and like, then when I was working with the kids, because you have to watch not only what you say, but how you're saying it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of just to keep thinking about. So, as a counselor, what are some of the behaviors you see associated with self-respect issues?
Okay. So this question is hard because I continue to connect self-respect with self-esteem, and I know they're different.
Mm-hmm.
um but there are elements of it that goes hand in hand, right? And so I think that a lot of times for children and in counseling, there's this focus on authority and power, right? And that frames who you respect, why you respect them, and so forth. And so a lot of behaviors that I see associated with self-respect connect to a student's view of themselves and their self-esteem, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, there are people that are thinking of self-harm, you know what I'm saying, and that is based on how they view self. There are students that have kind of given up on future advancement, like, I don't want to continue in school, and that's basically based upon what they feel that they bring. And this is why I say it's so important for adults to pour in to the children in their life, because that's their voice, that's what they're hearing. um and so if I'm having these behaviors of self-harm, or I'm having these behaviors of self-doubt, um I'm not viewing myself as a contributor to the world around me. Some of that
Right.
is based upon the adults in my life. It's not, you don't wake up that way. You're not born that way. Um,
Right.
I forgot, it
Mm-hmm.
was like some meme or something that I saw where it was like your child's internal voice is you speaking to them. Ugh,
Uh-uh.
that thing, I was just like, oh my gosh. It's too much power. I don't know what I'm gonna
Yeah.
do about that. But and it is not just for parents. It's anybody that is in the space of you know of a child. And then also being a therapist to adults,
Mm-hmm.
what I recognize is we are still listening to the voice of people from our youth. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many sessions that I've had where we go back to age 5, we go back to 12, 18, and recognize that some of the choices that we've made are based upon things that were spoken over us in our youth that we believed, right? Because of the authority piece. I'm gonna
Yeah.
respect you because you are the parent or you are the principal. And now I believe that about myself. Um, yeah, it's a powerful thing what we say. And it impacts our self-respect for years to come.
Definitely. I can attest to that. I'm telling you, like I've been talking to my therapist about actually continuing with school so I can be an art therapist. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm evaluating like, yeah, I would be a great therapist or whatever, but I just feel like at the point in my life right now, like I just want to explore all these different avenues that I have that I've been building for the past 11 years. Like, I just want to take that chance and invest
Mm-hmm.
in myself more before I go off and invest in school and do those things. Like, mind you, I know I would be a great therapist, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like at this point, I would be like trauma bonding, if you will. Like,
Wow.
instead,
Yeah.
yeah, instead of actually helping someone. So I
Yeah.
just I need to figure all my stuff out. And I know it won't always, it won't all be figured out ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I just feel like I need this time to do that before I rush into something else. And I know that's a sign of growth as well for me because
Mm-hmm.
before I would just try to take on too much or rush into it, or like you said, just feel like I don't have enough time, so I got to get this done. Time is wasting. I'm 30, like I got to do this, I got to do that. So I'm just
Yeah.
glad that taking a minute to just think on those things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Just take some time for yourself. Because,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes, and it's kind of the perspective that's been presented in the media, right? Your therapist is
Mm-hmm.
not the person that lives your life. You do, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you are more, as a therapist, if you are more focused on um, creating an agenda for your client, then you're not doing therapy. Like I
Mm-hmm.
remember before I started doing therapy, one of my mentors was talking about Ayanla, right? And that approach. No disrespect to it. But
Yeah.
true therapy is like you making those connections as a client, not me as a therapist telling you you
Mm-hmm.
need to do da 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 da,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so
Yeah.
that trauma bonding, that is dangerous. And when I am trying to live out aspects of my life through my clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I want you to make the choices that I
Yeah.
no, like it's supposed to be client centered. And then
Right.
because if you think about it, when the client takes the time to make these choices, then there's lasting impact. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it because my therapist told me to, the moment I stop seeing you, I'm going back to my old ways,
Exactly. Exactly.
you know?
You're right.
So yeah, I think that's amazing. Work on, and you're not going to be perfect, right? Because what I do know is everybody needs a, I mean, I think everybody needs a therapist.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have someone to unpack life through because it's just, there's so
Mhm.
much going on in this world. But
Yeah,
I think that it's important to wait until you've kind of gotten to a certain place within yourself before you do that level of care with someone else.
definitely.
Yeah.
For sure. So, do
Hmm.
you think that self-respect issues can cause mental health issues or vice versa?
Mm. So I think there's a correlation, between self respect issues and mental health issues. But I think that the
Mhm.
other thing is that's not like it alone, not in isolation. It's like the tree. There's always so many things under the surface, right? The roots run deep. So
Mhm.
self-respect may be like a manifestation, a lack of self-respect may be a manifestation of other experiences.
Mhm.
Coupled with things like your upbringing, past experiences that you've had, trauma that you've experienced.
Mhm.
Um, and even more so than that, like were your basic needs met, throughout life. Have there been times where you've gone without, and how has that impacted you? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and shout out to my program, because like recently we've been focusing on attachment theory, which is not something
Mm-hmm.
I was really keen on or aware of, but it is really like I am like absorbing it like a sponge right now, because it focuses on the impact of the caregiver on the child or the person that was being cared for, right?
Yeah.
So was your caregiver someone who was nurturing? Were they dismissive? Were they someone that was kind of like, not really present? All of
Right.
that impacts your mental health, um, your view of self, your view of the world, right? And so view of self goes back into that self-respect. So I
Yeah.
think that I think they go together, but I don't think that a lack of self-respect alone means equals mental illness. No, or a mental challenge. I think that there's other things that have to be considered as well.
Yeah.
It's
I
complicated,
yeah, definitely. It's not just it definitely is a complex issue, but both of them I know go hand in hand because I feel like you were saying, like upbringing and stuff, like there's certain things I'll do with my husband. I know I've seen my parents do with me. Like I will get upset with him if certain things aren't done the way
Mm,
I planned out. Like if I go to help him, right, and I it doesn't go the way I planned it to be, I would get
mm-hmm.
mad.
Yeah,
Like, well, why didn't it go this way, or why we not finished now, or why it's not done now, like, and then I had to check, like you said, my intentions, like, what,
right.
or are you helping him or you, like, so I just had to step back and realize, like, okay, I'm doing these things because of all this stuff, like, that's not
Mm-hmm.
it. So yeah, it's just
Yeah.
evaluating what's going on.
Yep. Yep.
Definitely,
Looking internally, and
definitely.
it's interesting because how we respect people in our relationships, right? So friendships,
Mhm.
work relationships, love relationships is
Yeah.
also based again on the examples of respect we've seen before us, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm sure we're gonna talk about that later, but it all plays a part. Like how we treat people is based on how we've been treated and what we've seen um,
Mm,
over
yeah,
our time, on the earth.
definitely, for sure. So, are there any examples that you can? We touched on this a little bit, but that you can share with us that we may be disrespecting ourselves and not even realize. I know we touched on it a little bit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, I'm gonna continue to connect self-esteem this to self-respect, but I think that
Mm-hmm.
um, a way that we could be disrespecting ourselves. That's what the question was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is you know, how we view ourselves, right? What do we admire about ourselves? How does that interplay into our relationships? How does that interplay into the choices and decisions that we make, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am shortchanging myself because of my lack of admiration
Mm-hmm.
of myself, then
Yeah.
that is a form of, that's an example of disrespect. So I'm not going for that job because I just don't feel that I am valuable enough to take that risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Risk taking in and of itself, I think, can be a form of respect, right? Because I'm putting myself out there. Through this whole pandemic, so many people have gotten new jobs. And some of it is because they finally have taken the time to be like, you know what, I'm gonna make a decision for me.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and like I have so many friends that I'm like so proud of because they finally made that leap from that toxic job, that toxic
Right.
work environment.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a pandemic had to make us do that. Everybody being cooped up.
Right.
Then it was like, you know what, I'm leaving. Or I'm gonna
Yeah.
pursue that aspiration of a business or a profession or even a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So disrespect sometimes is not taking that risk that we know we should have taken months, years ago. Um, and then also not giving ourselves grace, right? If you are
Mm-hmm.
like just so hard on yourself and not giving yourself the grace to make mistakes or to um just have moments where you don't know the answers. Like that
Mhm.
to me is a form of disrespect. Yeah, the list could go on and on, but it's very hard for me at times to separate respect from esteem in our view of self.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they intertwine for sure. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because if you have issues with me, you're definitely gonna have issues with the other. So that's
Yeah.
definitely um, yeah, for sure. And it was just so many points, so many good points that you talked for and pointed out tonight. Like, I thank you again for being here. I
For
got one
sure.
more piece for you, and then
Okay.
we'll name our pieces. So
Okay.
do you think that respect is a learned behavior? And if so, when does this lesson begin?
A learned behavior. I got a question before that. It's okay that my piece is not done, right?
Oh yeah, yes, yes.
Like mine is a work in progress. Okay.
That's
So
fine.
back to the question. So is it a learned behavior? Yeah,
Mhm,
I do think respect can aspects of it can be learned, right? Like an
mhm.
example I could think of is and this is just personal to me. Like children that say what when you call their name, like
Oh,
Tamika, what? Like who raised you? Like what is wrong with you? But
yeah.
these are things that are connected to upbringing, right? And so I do think that children are sponges. They're absorbing everything anyway, right? And before we can even realize it, this is why we have traits like our mother and our father, without even trying, because we watched them and that was our example. Or if you were raised by your grandmother, there are things about your grandma that you encompass. Um,
Mhm,
and so I do think it can be learned. I think that, like I said earlier, it's taught in a lot of different ways.
mhm.
When your baby goes to daycare, they start to do things, and you're like, okay, we didn't teach that here, but
Right.
that is something that you learned from school in a different environment. So yeah, I think it starts from like infancy and beyond, and when you're a toddler, I think that's when you start to kind of manifest beginning signs of what is considered respect, what are boundaries, um,
Mhm.
and it goes from there, and it's funny because like even I said earlier, like who raised you? There are times where I ask that question of adults, like
Yeah.
who who was the first person to define respect for you, because they did not do a good job.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, it is a big learning curve for sure with me
Hmm.
respect. Um, because sometimes you may think like, oh well, I never even seen that, but then like
Right.
you just really gotta sit down and evaluate, like we said, like what is happening, what lens you're looking at life through at this time, and set what's going on.
Hmm.
And if you don't like it, respect yourself and change it. That's where I'm at. So
Hmm. For sure.
yes, indeed. So, all right, we're gonna show these beautiful pieces. Mine's not finished
Ooh.
either, so
It
it's
looks
gonna
more like art than mine.
okay. So,
Are
yes,
we revealing at the same time or separately? How does this work?
you can name mine first, and then I'll name yours. Okay. So, what would
Oh,
you name?
it's beautiful. What would
Thank
I
you.
name that?
Hmm.
Gosh. So since our topic tonight is respect, um, I think maybe I would name it like maybe visions of respect. It's got a lot going on there.
And you know what is so funny, Renee? Oh my God. This
Okay,
is what
God,
I
is that
know.
what you were gonna say? No, I'm just
Yeah, no, listen, like this is okay. This is an eye right here. And
okay.
I always do eyes when I'm trying to like show vision or like progression and stuff. So it's definitely funny that you said vision. And this is how I know, like, okay, I'm aligning with spirit for sure. Like,
Yes.
it's definitely just a representation of the rage and the experiences and stuff that I'm letting
Mm,
go and just trying to hold on to that vision. So definitely, thank you so much.
yes.
For sure, for sure. Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
exposing
Yes.
myself. So my marker got dry at one
Okay,
point in
all
my
right.
picture, right? So
Ooh,
this is what I was creating, and this is when it went dry. But I don't know. Can you see? Yeah.
I love that. I love it. That's
What is it?
awesome.
What is it
Okay,
called?
let me see. What we gonna call this? The versions of respect.
The versions of respect.
Yep.
Version. Oops, sorry, my whole thing. I like it. I like it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because the funny thing, right? Oh, is the fact that originally I was like, man, I got all this white space, right? But at the same
Mm.
time, some of it looks kind of intentional.
Yes. Like
So
it was like
there.
yes. Mm.
I feel like an artist tonight, man. Forget that. I'm not a
Yes.
counselor. I'm an artist. No, I'm just like,
Awesome. Yeah, man. It looks. I don't know if you ever heard of the artist named MC Escher, but I'll send him his stuff to you. But
okay,
it looks kind of like that, like you on that flow tonight. So that was
cool.
awesome.
I have to find out. Now I just
Definitely
need markers
awesome.
that remain to the end because it's unfinished at this point.
Well, that's all right. Yes, make sure you send me a pic. And again, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. You
Thank
guys
you.
tag Miss Renee in the replay of this. And again, thank you for joining us. We love you. Anything you'd like to say before we go tonight?
I mean, I hope that whoever watched tonight continues to see their own value and worth because I know me
Mhm.
talking about it is like, making me feel that as well. Like, man, we have to respect ourselves. That makes us even better at showing that same respect to other people. So, I
Mhm.
hope that that was kind of received this evening. Yep.
Awesome. Yes, indeed. Well, I felt it as well. This makes me want to do more, keep respecting myself, respect my time, produce more crazy content for you guys. Again, thank you for joining me. Have a good night, you guys. Peace.
Thanks. Bye.
All right.